Chapter 4 My Longing for Education. Before we begin, the slaves working tirelessly in southern states of the USA were set free by the Emancipation Proclamation signed by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1, 1863. It brought about a new dawn in the lives of scores of African Americans. Earlier, it was illegal for slaves to read and write. After they got freedom, they were all anxious to become literate. Following is an extract from the autobiography of one of the most famous African American leaders of the USA, Booker T. Washington, on his struggle to get education. From the time that I can remember having any thoughts about anything, I recall that I had an intense longing to learn to read. Soon after we got settled in some manner in our new cabin in West Virginia, I persuaded my mother to get hold of a book for me. She somehow procured an old copy of Webster's Blue Back Spelling Book, which contained the alphabet. I began at once to devour this book, and I think that it was the first one I ever had in my hands. I tried in all the ways I could think of to learn the alphabet, all of course without a teacher, for I could find no one to teach me. There was not a single member of my race anywhere near us who could read, and I was too timid to approach any of the white people. Within a few weeks, I mastered the greatest portion of the alphabet. In all my efforts to learn to read, my mother fully shared my ambition and sympathized with me and helped me in every way that she could. Though she was not formally educated herself, she had high ambitions for her children and a large fund of good, hard common sense. In the mindset of my struggles and longing for an education, a young colored boy who had learned to read in the state of Ohio came to Malden. As soon as the colored people found out that he could read, a newspaper was bought, and at the close of nearly every day's work, this young man would be surrounded by a group of men and women who were anxious to hear him read the news contained in the papers. About this time, the idea of opening some kind of a school for the colored children in the village began to be discussed by the people. Since it would be the first school for the colored children that had ever been opened in that part of Virginia, it was, of course, to be a great and wildly exciting event. As yet, no free schools had been started for colored people. Hence, each family agreed to pay a certain amount per month, with the understanding that the teacher who was appointed was to board round, that is, spend a day with each family. This was not bad for the teacher, for each family tried to provide the very best on the day the teacher was to be its guest. I recall that I looked forward very anxiously to the teacher's day at our little cabin. All across the country, it was a whole race trying to go to school. No one was too old to make the attempt to learn, and almost no one was too young. As fast as any kind of teachers could be found, not only were day schools filled, but night schools as well. The great ambition of the older people was to try to learn to read the Bible before they died. With this end in view, the men and the women who were 50 or 75 years old would often be found in the night school. Some day schools were formed soon after freedom, but the principal book studied in the Sunday school was the spelling book. Day school, night school, and Sunday school were always crowded, and often many had to be turned away for want of room. The opening of the school in the Kanawha Valley, however, brought to me one of the sharpest disappointments that I ever experienced. I had been working in a salt furnace for several months, and my stepfather had discovered that I had a financial value for the family. And so when the school opened, he decided that he could not spare me from my work. I was bitterly disappointed. The disappointment was made even more severe because I could see from my place of work the happy children passing to and from school. My mother tried to comfort me in all the ways she could and to help me find a way to learn. After a while, I managed to arrange some lessons at night with the teacher after the day's work was done. These night lessons were so welcome that I think I learned more at night than the other children did during the day. But my boyish heart was still set upon going to the day school. Finally, I won and was permitted to go to the school in the day for a few months. The understanding was that I must rise early in the morning and work in the furnace till 9 o'clock and return immediately after the school closed in the afternoon for at least 2 more hours of work. The schoolhouse was some distance from the furnace where I now worked, and as I had to work till 9 o'clock and the school opened at 9, I found myself in a difficulty. School would always begin before I reached it, and sometimes my class had recited. To get around this difficulty, I did something wrong. I am sure that most people will condemn me for what I did, but since it is a fact, I might as well state it. There was a large clock in a little office in the furnace. This clock, of course, all the 100 or more people depended upon to begin and end the day's work. I got the idea that the way for me to reach school on time was to move the clock hands from 8:30 up to the 9 o'clock mark. This I found myself doing morning after morning till the furnace boss discovered that something was wrong and locked the clock in a case. I did not mean to bring inconvenience to anybody. I simply meant to reach that schoolhouse in time. When, however, I found myself at the school for the first time, I found myself faced with other difficulties. In the first place, I found that all the other children wore hats or caps on their heads, and I had neither hat nor cap. In fact, I do not remember that up to the time of going to school, I had ever worn any kind of covering upon my head. But of course, when I saw how all the other boys were dressed, I began to feel quite uncomfortable. As usual, I put the case before my mother, and she explained to me that she had no money with which to buy a store hat, a rather new fashion at that time among the members of my race. But she said she would find a way to help me out of the difficulty. And so she did. She somehow got 2 pieces of homespun and sewed them together. And I was soon the proud possessor of my first cap. The lesson that my mother taught me in this has always remained with me, and I have tried as best as I could to teach it to others. I have always felt proud whenever I think of the incident that my mother had such strength of character. She did not try to impress my schoolmates and others with the fact that she was able to buy me a store hat when she could not. Since that time, I have owned many kinds of caps and hats, but never one of which I have felt so proud. My first cap made of the 2 pieces of clothes sewn together by my mother.